Hello and welcome to The Bottom Line here on TVP World. This is where we unpack some of the main business and economic stories of the day. I'm your host, Marie Cato. Moldova is Europe's poorest Eastern European country, but it is working hard to create a broad and multi-pronged strategy to integrate itself into the EU and get its economy going after a period of recession. Brussels is willing to support it, but the question is whether Moldova is biting off more than it can chew. Jan Kennedy tells us more about the economic challenges that Moldova faces.
These are the streets of Chișinău, the capital of Moldova, Eastern Europe's smallest and poorest country, but with great ambition for change as it strives to join the European Union under the leadership of President Maia Sandu.
To me, the phenomena of Maia Sandu, because we can call it like this, was a sign that things can be changed even then we think everything is lost, because it's important to remember that back then the country was ruled by corrupt politicians, by oligarchs who managed to capture and to hold hostage almost all the institutions.
Since obtaining EU candidate status alongside Ukraine in 2022, Moldova has committed to an ambitious roadmap of reforms, but the road ahead is steep. Over the past few years, the country has been faced with major headwinds, including a severe energy crisis and a range of spillover effects from the war in neighbouring Ukraine. Moldova currently finds itself in a technical recession after economic output shrank by 1.2% in the first quarter of the year, marking the third consecutive quarter of contraction. Beyond economic challenges, Moldova faces a deep demographic crisis. Since 1989, the population has declined by nearly 2 million due to low birth rates and emigration, making it the world's fastest depopulating nation. Yet this challenge is also viewed as an opportunity. The government is calling for its diaspora, one of the largest per capita in Europe, to return and help boost growth.
Always knew that it would come a moment when I would have to come back. I didn't know that it would happen like this, as it happened like two months ago when I returned. But I knew that at a certain point I would come back.
And officials are full of optimism for the years to come.
With strong governance, we plan to double our economy in the next decade. This comes from jumping in front of very low economic growth, zero economic growth in 2024. It's an ambitious goal we need to fulfill, but the challenges are also opportunities.
Moldova has also made major progress on the energy front. Since 2022, the country has weaned itself off Russian natural gas, turning instead to Romanian and Ukrainian sources, with an aim to integrate fully with the EU energy market by 2027.
Moldova may come across as ambitious and strategic, but at the moment it's poor and has little to offer as an inspiring EU member state. That's what it looks like from the outside. And maybe that's what is indeed on the inside. But let's talk to Mateusz Dadej, Chief Central and Europe Economist at COFACE, to learn more about Moldova and its challenges. Hello and thank you for joining us.
Oh, hello everyone.
So winemaking is actually what many of us associate Moldova with, its industry. But I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about the broader story of Moldova's industries, its strengths and its weaknesses.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, of course, winery is one of the strengths and one of the products that are widely known abroad. So, for example, Purcari, the winery that's being actually that's in the process of being overtaken by Polish Maspex. But of course, there is a broad aspects of, positive aspects and the good fundamentals of Moldova. It's still a strongly growing economy that has a big path forward, and the outlook, as much as it's struggling with some of the internal problems, corruption and so on, it's still gradually developing and I would say catching up to some of the countries.
But the country's economic performance has been a bit of a mixed bag lately. Let's bring up a graph, please. We can see that the economy has mostly expanded in 2023, the first half of 2024. But then we have 3 months of economic contraction. So Moldova is currently in recession, and then the International Monetary Fund says that the forecast is that GDP will only grow by about 0.8% this year. So can you tell us a little bit about what has been going on in Moldova from that perspective?
Yes, absolutely. So that's actually part of a business cycle that's well persistent in many countries as well. But Moldova was actually positioned very much unfavorably during the energy crisis because of its dependence on Russian import of energy. And it was actually being held hostage by Russia, and once the energy was cut off, then of course the technical recession followed, and of course the production plants and so on have to be halted, so on. So that's obviously has a huge and tremendous basically impact on the economy. Even though, as I mentioned, in the long term, I would say that's negligible.
Negligible, okay. But then there's also the issue of demigration and low demographics, which obviously has a lot of impact on the economy. It has a huge diaspora abroad. Moldovans are keen to leave Moldova. Obviously, this depletes its workforce, and the country really can't function without remittances. And there's also a suggestion that the country is now going to encourage its diaspora to move back home to boost the economy. How is the government going to do that, really?
Yeah, I mean, that's in general a very good point, and especially when we are talking about the long-term prospects of the country. And indeed, I mean, the problem was that also a lot of Moldovans had a double passport, also a Romanian one. So they were able to easily move across the European Union, get to the labor market abroad. So that's a very much a huge problem, because I think like the most they have to incentivize economically to come back the diaspora. And it's a bit of a problem because, of course, the economy is developing, but it's not developing fast enough. And there is a long way to go before they will have any competitive wages, any competitive well-being in Moldova comparable to, for example, Western Europe or even Romania. So that's a huge problem, and I don't have really an easy answer, but of course, being more integrated to the European Union, fighting the corruption, and accordingly with some of the technocratic reforms is absolutely necessary in order to boost the long-term prospects of the country.
Moldova clearly is on the path towards EU accession. There's obviously a lot of work that lies ahead. We are yet to see the results of the summit that takes place today. Do you think that there might be some political developments that might actually derail the process? Because obviously we await the parliamentary elections in the autumn.
Yes, I don't know where to begin actually, but there's absolutely plenty of. And the one upcoming is going to be actually the parliamentary elections soon in September. And everyone is certain that Russia will most likely interfere once again, as was the case last year at the end. And so that's going to be the next, of course, the next obstacle to kind of for the pro-European party to gain a majority and move forward with the necessary reforms to tackle, for example, corruption that was required by the European Union in order to get to access to the European Union.
President Maia Sandu, obviously, she leads the pro-European effort, and I think she's become quite, I suppose, the face of all these efforts. But we mustn't forget that there are quite a number of Moldovans who are anti-EU. And there's a multi-pronged accession strategy that lies ahead. But if the opposition wins, do you think that the accession efforts would still carry through?
Well, I sincerely hope not so, but yes, indeed, that's an important obstacle because, there is always this moment that the parliament may actually opt out from the negotiation table. So that's definitely a problem. And yeah, I mean, that's so we all hope that actually the events in September are going to end up pretty well. Otherwise, I don't really want to even think of.
But how advanced are the talks as of now? And even if things were to slow down, there still needs to be some sort of effort put into boosting the economy because the country is in tatters, essentially.
Yes, that's true. Although there is not many, there are particular Moldovans or parts, especially the oligarchs, that are unwilling to introduce a technocratic and meritocratic reforms, because otherwise they will lose some rents. So there are oligarchs that are basically extracting the rents from the population and so on. So there are some conflicts of interest, some particular groups of interest that are not really keen on moving forward the accession to the European Union. So it's not that clear, but hopefully there is, as I mentioned, and you mentioned, yes, Maia Sandu, face of the pro-European party and this whole movement that's going to push forward. And I sincerely believe that they will kind of realize, for example, looking by Romanians, that the integration into the European Union is actually favorable. And this is a case of a success case, I would say.
But regardless, some reforms need to be implemented, like regardless of who is leading the government, aside from the accession talks. And what would you say are the top 3 priorities?
Yes, so as I mentioned all the way, it's tackling corruption, that's one thing. Gaining much more energy independence, being more independent from Russia. That's being done already to some extent, for example, introducing some green energy. So we mentioned Purcari, which is introducing much more green energy and kind of leaving, I think it just happened a year before, that they actually become absolutely independent from the Russian energy. And, it's one of the cases that they are trying to move away, because Moldovans don't really want to be held hostage by Russia. And so that's one of the most important things, those 2 parts.
And what about Moldova as an investment destination? Because we know of one Polish company, an FMCG giant called Maspex, who is directly involved in Moldovan winemaking via its intermediary in Romania. Do you think that Moldova will become a prospective market, and could it become a good place to invest? And how long might that actually take? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good question, but I would say yes, I'm definitely positive for the fundamentals, and you can just take a look at the success case of Romania, right? Those 2 nations are very much similar in their cultural foundations, and yes, I think Moldovans just needs a quality institutions, a environment that's kind of pro-market oriented, but also it's kind of maintaining this property rights and so on. So I think those are the requirements that just are absolutely necessary for Moldovans to prosper. So yeah, I think for now, speaking as of now, of course, those are people that are well educated, but also they are very much competitive when it comes to cost of labor. So that's oftentimes one of the key things that are kind of attracting those foreign direct investments.
The country obviously is ambitious, and with Doina Nistor, the Moldovan Minister of Economic Development and Digitization, she visited London in May to attract investors, and she made some interesting points. And let's bring up a visual here. I just want to bring up a quote. A statement she made: "With strong governance, we plan to double our economy in the next decade. This comes from jumping in front of very low economic growth, zero economic growth in 2024. It's an ambitious goal we need to fulfill, but the challenges are also opportunities." Do you think that doubling the economy in the next decade is actually achievable for Moldova?
I think it's achievable, yes. So that's the country that's starting from a low point. So of course it's much easier to gain some traction. For this year we are, for example, forecasting the GDP to grow by 5%. So that's a dynamic that will allow them to do so.
5%.
Yes, exactly.
5%.
Yes.
So when we say the challenges are also opportunities, what opportunities do we see in the challenges?
I mean, the challenges are, of course, so the energy independence, that's still, I mean, those require a substantial amount of capital expenditure. So I think those are actually, things that have to be decided as of now, but they will, of course, provide a substantial amount of, an environment that's kind of facilitating the investments. So yes, that's absolutely crucial.
And what kind of investors do you think that Moldova can actually attract as it obviously journeys through its recovery and growth?
That's currently Moldova is very much dependent on the agribusiness and agricultural economy. But once it's going to be, much more easier to invest in, the kind of institutions will be more favorable. It's going to be more industrializing. So, for example, any kind of industries, any kind of offshoring or nearshoring from Western Europeans, that's all that can be actually facilitated in Moldova. So any kind of actually, labor-intensive manufacturing companies, that's definitely useful. Given also the proximity to, bigger and bigger markets like Romania and, not so far away as well, Western Europe.
But what if there are no people to work in these labor-intensive industries?
Yes, that's absolutely a struggle. But providing job opportunities, Moldova doesn't really need to develop to the extent that the salaries are absolutely equal the Western one, because there's always this premium that people will always prefer to live in their homeland. So if the wages will grow steadily and they will catch up to some extent, not to the same one, there will be at some point this breakthrough when the diaspora will move forward and come back to Moldova.
But I think it'll take some time before the diaspora will want to return to Moldova. I mean, just like in the case of Poland, it's only around now the Poles are returning to Poland because the standards of living and the salaries are going reaching the standards of Western Europe.
Yes, that's absolutely true. It's always a long path. Even if we are speaking in terms of like a very fast economic development, it's still like a single-digit growth. And we can see that in Poland, I think it took like 10 years since the accession to the European Union before actually people started to come back. So we gained this we had net immigration. So yes, absolutely, that's a long term and. Yes, that's true.
Recently, Moldova made some headlines due to the energy problems and being tangled up with Russian energy providers. But the interesting thing is that the country has said that by 2027, so really that's not that long off, everything is going to be straightened out on this front. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's realistic? Is that going to happen?
Can you repeat?
That Moldova recently made headlines because of its energy problems. It's been tangled up with Russian energy providers, but it's said that by 2027 everything is going to be cleared up on that front. Do you think do you agree with that? Do you think that that is realistic?
Yeah, so they are gaining more and more of green energy. They are participating in some of the programs with the European Union in order to, there is also, it's definitely for the benefit of the European Union as well, so that Moldova will be independent from Russia, because that's what yet another country, possibly in future a member, that will need to be independent from the Russian energy. And so, of course, they are backed by a very strong partnership from European Union, and I think this might help substantially.
And what about Transnistria, the breakaway region? Can Moldova really prosper without integrating this rogue region?
Well, I'm really curious about that as well, especially in terms of law framework and so on. But yes, so far the EU leaders are actually saying that it's not a big obstacle, even though it is. But this won't be absolutely a necessary requirement in order for the Moldova to gain to access to the European Union. So I think this is doable, albeit absolutely still problematic, especially given that it's a pro-Russian, so it's kind of provides this backdoor for Russia and their kind of influences to the European Union.
Okay. Mateusz Dadej, Chief Central and Eastern European Economist at COFACE, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And that concludes the bottom line for today. I was your host, Marie Cato. We bring you the best of regional business Monday to Friday at 5:10 CET on TVP World. And in the meantime, for the latest in regional business, follow us on X and on tvpworld.com.